While cleaning the house, I overheard my daughter say, "That old woman should already be in a more appropriate place." When the officer showed up with the house sale papers, she realized it was no longer hers. "Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached." During the house cleaning, I heard my daughter saying, "This old woman should already be in a more suitable place." When the officer arrived with the house sale papers, she knew it was no longer hers. At first, I thought I'd misheard. The vacuum cleaner was running, and at 60, my hearing isn't what it used to be. But Caroline's voice carried clearly from the kitchen, sharp enough to slice through the drone of housework. "Mom doesn't need all this space anymore," she continued to someone, probably Robert, her husband of 5 years. "A nice assisted living facility would be so much better for her. She's getting too old to manage this place by herself." I shut off the vacuum, my hands trembling slightly. Too old? I'd been maintaining this house for 25 years, ever since David died and left me to raise Caroline alone. I'd never missed a mortgage payment. Never neglected the garden David had loved so much. Never let the place fall into disrepair, even when money was tight and I had to work 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I moved closer to the kitchen, careful to keep my footsteps silent on the hardwood floors David and I had installed together during the first year of our marriage. "The market's hot right now," Robert replied, his voice lower but still clear enough. "We could get top dollar for this place. It's the perfect time to sell." "I've got everything arranged," Caroline said. "Mom won't even have to worry about a thing." My heart turned to ice in my chest. How considerate of her. How thoughtful to arrange my entire future without my input. I stepped into the kitchen doorway, not bothering to hide my presence any longer. Caroline's back was to me, but Robert saw me first. His eyes widened slightly, and he cleared his throat. Caroline turned, her perfect smile faltering for just a second before she rallied. "Mom. I didn't hear you stop cleaning." She brushed her immaculate blonde hair behind her ear, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "What exactly have you arranged for me, Caroline?" She exchanged a quick glance with Robert before approaching me, taking my hands in hers. "Mom, we've been meaning to talk to you about this. You're getting older, and this house is just so much work. Wouldn't it be nice to live somewhere where you don't have to worry about maintenance or yard work? Where there are people your own age to socialize with?" I pulled my hands away. "This is my home. I'm not going anywhere." "Mom, be reasonable," Caroline sighed, using the same tone she'd use with a stubborn child. "It's for your own good. You've had a few memory lapses lately." "I forgot where I put my reading glasses once," I interrupted. "That hardly qualifies me for a nursing home." Robert stepped forward then, all business in his tailored suit. Always ready for a sales pitch, that one. "Denise, we've actually found a wonderful community. It's got activities, medical staff on site, and..." "No." I cut him off. "This discussion is over." I turned and walked away, ignoring Caroline calling after me. I needed air. I needed to think. 2 days later, a man in a navy suit arrived at my front door. "Mrs. Denise Collins?" he asked, holding out an official-looking envelope. "Yes, that's me," I confirmed, a knot forming in my stomach. "These are for you," he said, handing me the envelope. "Documents regarding the sale of this property." "There must be some mistake," I said, not taking the envelope. "I haven't put my house up for sale." He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, according to our records, Caroline Collins Winters has power of attorney and has authorized the sale. The paperwork appears to be in order." Power of attorney? I'd never signed any such thing. But then I remembered, 6 months ago, after a minor fall, Caroline had brought me a stack of papers to sign while I was still groggy from pain medication. "Just some insurance forms," she'd said. I took the envelope with numb fingers, thanked the man mechanically, and closed the door. Inside, my hands shook as I opened it and read the contents. My house, the house David and I had saved for years to afford, the house where Caroline had taken her first steps, the house that held every memory I had of my late husband, was being sold out from under me. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. I sank to the floor, the papers scattered around me like autumn leaves. The betrayal burned worse than anything I'd ever felt. My own daughter. My only child. I wept there on the entryway floor, mourning not just the loss of my home but the death of everything I thought I knew about my daughter. About our relationship. About the life I'd built with such care. When the tears finally stopped, something else took their place. Something harder. Colder. I stood up, my knees protesting but my resolve firm. Caroline might have stolen my trust, but she wasn't going to steal my home. Not if I had anything to say about it. I waited on the porch for Caroline, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink that David would have loved to photograph. They were his colors, he always said. The warm tones of life being lived fully. When her silver BMW pulled into the driveway, I steeled myself. Caroline stepped out looking tired, designer handbag slung over her shoulder, perfectly highlighted hair slightly disheveled after a long day at her marketing firm. "Mom," she said cautiously, climbing the porch steps. "I wasn't expecting you to be waiting outside." I held up the envelope. "Care to explain this?" Her expression shifted, concern, guilt, and then something harder passing over her features. "Can we talk about this inside? It's chilly out here." "By all means," I replied, my voice colder than the evening air. "We should discuss the sale of my house and my house, while it's still mine." In the living room, Caroline perched on the edge of the sofa, the same sofa where I'd nursed her through chicken pox when she was 7. Where I'd held her while she cried over her first heartbreak at 16. Where David and I had sat when we told her he was sick. Terminal. "Mom, I know this seems sudden," she began, her voice taking on that soothing tone people use for the elderly and small children. "But Robert and I have been worried about you living here alone. So you forged my signature on a power of attorney?" I cut in. "I didn't forge anything," she protested. "You signed it. Last winter, after your fall. You told me they were insurance forms." Her eyes flickered away. "I thought it would be easier this way. You've always been so stubborn about accepting help." "This isn't help, Caroline. This is theft." "Mom." She looked genuinely shocked. "How can you say that? I'm your daughter. Everything I do is because I love you and want what's best for you." "What's best for me?" I echoed. "Or what's best for you and Robert?" A flash of something, irritation, maybe, or frustration, crossed her face. "The market is at its peak right now. This house is worth nearly triple what you and Dad paid for it. It makes financial sense. So this is about money." My heart sank further, though I'd already suspected as much. "Of course not," she backpedaled. "It's about making sure you're taken care of. The retirement community we found is beautiful. It's got gardens, activities." "I have a garden here," I interrupted. "The garden your father planted. The one where we scattered his ashes, as he requested." That stopped her short. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of my real daughter, the sensitive girl who had adored her father, who had helped me tend his garden after he was gone. But then Robert's influence reasserted itself. "Mom, be practical. You're not getting any younger. This house is too much maintenance. The stairs will become a hazard. The property taxes keep going up. It makes sense to sell now and secure your future." "My future?" I laughed without humor. "Or yours? Tell me, Caroline, how much of the proceeds were you planning to give me, and how much were you and Robert keeping for that vacation home you've been talking about?" Her face flushed. "That's not fair." "No, it's not," I agreed. "None of this is fair." I stood up and walked to the old cedar chest in the corner, David's first gift to me after we were married. I pulled out a photo album and set it on the coffee table between us. Do you remember this? I asked, opening to pictures of Caroline as a toddler, playing in the backyard. She glanced at it. Mom, this isn't about memories. It's about practicality. Look at the background of these photos, I pressed. See that wall? Your father and I built it together, brick by brick, mixing the cement by hand because we couldn't afford to hire someone. I turned the page. And here, this is the summer we put in the oak floors. You were 10. You helped stain them. I remember, she said softly. After your father died, I worked 3 jobs to keep this house. Did you know that? I cleaned offices at night after my regular job, and on weekends, I did bookkeeping for Mr. Peterson's hardware store. All so you wouldn't have to move. So you could stay in the same school, keep your same friends during the hardest time of your life. Caroline looked away. I know you sacrificed. I didn't see it as a sacrifice, I corrected her. I saw it as love. The kind of love that puts someone else's needs first. Silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we weren't saying. Finally, Caroline stood. I'm sorry you're upset. But the reality is, the sale is already in process. The buyers are eager. I think once you see the retirement community. Get out, I said quietly. Mom. Get out of my house, Caroline. My voice didn't waver. And tell Robert he's not welcome here either. She gathered her purse, her composure slipping. You're being irrational. We'll talk when you've calmed down. After she left, I sat alone in the growing darkness, the photo album open on my lap. When had my daughter changed so much? When had money and status become more important to her than family? Than me? It started after she met Robert, I realized. He'd swept her off her feet with his ambition, his smooth talk, his promises of the perfect life. And slowly, subtly, he'd changed her. Or perhaps he'd simply brought out something that was already there, dormant, waiting. As I closed the album, my hand brushed against something tucked between the last page and the back cover. A small key, the key to David's old roll-top desk in the spare bedroom. The desk I hadn't opened since his death. Something told me I needed to look inside. Now. I couldn't sleep that night. The key to David's desk felt heavy in my palm as I turned it over and over, hesitant to use it after all these years. When morning came, I still hadn't opened the desk. Some memories were still too raw, even after 2 decades. The harsh ring of the doorbell startled me out of my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Eleanor, my next-door neighbor of 15 years, holding a pie dish. I made too much quiche, she announced when I opened the door, though we both knew she had deliberately made extra. Eleanor had been bringing me food since David died, a ritual of care that had evolved into our Saturday breakfasts together. I tried to smile as I took the dish. Thank you, Ellie. Her eyes narrowed, taking in my unwashed face, the robe I was still wearing at 10 a.m. What's wrong? I hesitated. Eleanor had been my closest friend since she moved in, a retired English teacher with a no-nonsense attitude and a surprisingly wicked sense of humor. She'd helped me through the worst of my grief after David, and I'd supported her after her own husband left her for a woman half their age. Caroline is selling my house, I said, the words still bitter on my tongue. Eleanor's expression hardened. Without your permission, I'm assuming? I nodded, fighting back tears I thought I'd exhausted the night before. Come on, Eleanor said, taking the quiche back. Pack a bag. You're staying with me. Ellie, I can't impose. It's not imposing when it's invited. Her tone brooked no argument. Besides, that daughter of yours is going to come back, and you shouldn't be alone when she does. I knew she was right. Caroline would return, probably with Robert in tow, both of them armed with logical arguments and subtle manipulations. I needed time to think, to plan. Let me get a few things, I said. I quickly packed clothes, toiletries, and important documents into an overnight bag. On impulse, I also took the small wooden box containing David's wedding ring and the letters he'd written me during our courtship. As I was about to leave, my gaze fell on his desk. Now wasn't the time, but I couldn't leave the key behind. I slipped it into my purse before following Eleanor to her townhouse next door. Eleanor's place was cozy and lived in, with bookshelves lining every wall and a slightly overfed tabby cat named Fitzgerald who regarded me with sleepy indifference. "The guest room is made up," she said, putting the quiche in the oven to warm. "Now sit. Eat. Then we'll figure out how to handle that daughter of yours." Over breakfast, I told Eleanor everything: the overheard conversation, the officer with the sale documents, Caroline's cold justifications. "You need a lawyer," Eleanor declared, pouring more coffee. I shook my head. "I can't afford one right now. Most of my savings went to helping Caroline with the down payment on her and Robert's house 3 years ago." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Then we'll find one who'll work pro bono," Eleanor insisted. "My nephew Stephen is a lawyer. Let me call him." While Eleanor made the call, I sat on her back porch, watching the birds at her feeder. From here, I could see the oak tree that straddled our property line, the one David and Eleanor's ex-husband had argued good-naturedly about every fall when the leaves dropped. My phone buzzed, a text from Caroline: "We need to talk. Robert and I are coming over at 3. I showed Eleanor the message when she returned. "Stephen can see you Monday," she said. "He specializes in elder law. And don't answer that text. Let them wonder where you are. They'll just come back," I sighed. "Good. It'll give them time to worry, to realize you're not as helpless as they think." Eleanor's eyes gleamed with a hint of righteous mischief. "Besides, I've been watching that Robert since they got married. Something's not right with that man." "What do you mean?" Eleanor shrugged. "Just a feeling. The way he looks at your house when he thinks no one's watching. Like he's calculating its value down to the penny." A chill ran through me. I'd had similar thoughts but dismissed them as unfair. Now I wondered if my instincts had been right all along. "There's something else," I admitted, pulling David's key from my purse. "I found this last night. It's to David's desk. I haven't opened it since." Eleanor understood immediately. "Do you want to now?" I nodded slowly. "But I don't want to go back to the house yet." "Then we'll get the desk," Eleanor said simply. "My son is coming to fix my garbage disposal tomorrow. He can help us move it here." That afternoon, I watched from Eleanor's window as Caroline and Robert pulled into my driveway at precisely 3 p.m. Caroline looked polished as always, but there was tension in her posture as she rang the bell repeatedly. Robert checked his watch impatiently, then made a call, probably to me. I'd silenced my phone. After 20 minutes, they left, Caroline's face tight with frustration. A small, petty part of me felt satisfied. That evening, as Eleanor and I sat watching an old movie, she turned to me with unexpected seriousness. "You know they're not just going to give up, right? If they've started the sale process, they've got a buyer lined up. There's money involved now." I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach. "What am I going to do, Ellie?" "First," she said, "we're going to see what's in that desk. Then we're going to fight like hell." For the first time since finding those sale papers, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't alone in this. And maybe, just maybe, I could win. The next morning, Eleanor's son Mike arrived with his toolbox, a reassuring presence with his father's gentle eyes and his mother's determination. When I explained the situation, he didn't hesitate. "Let's go get that desk," he said. We entered my house cautiously, half expecting to find Caroline waiting, but the place was empty. Upstairs in the spare bedroom, David's roll-top desk stood exactly as he had left it, a solid oak antique we'd found at a garage sale and lovingly restored together. "It's heavier than it looks," I warned as Mike positioned himself to lift it. He smiled. "I've got it, Mrs. Collins. Don't worry." With the desk safely transported to Eleanor's guest room, I was finally alone with it. My hands trembled as I inserted the key into the lock, hearing the familiar click as the roll top released, allowing me to slide it open. The scent of David's old pipe tobacco still lingered faintly inside, bringing tears to my eyes. Everything was exactly as he had arranged it, his fountain pen in its holder, stationery neatly stacked, a half-written letter to Caroline when she was away at college. I opened the small drawers one by one, finding old photographs, warranty papers for appliances long since replaced, birthday cards I'd given him over the years. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of paid bills, I found a thick manila envelope with my name written on it in David's handwriting. Inside was a letter, dated just weeks before his death, and a stack of legal documents. My darling Denise. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've finally cleaned out my desk. I hope it wasn't too soon. I know how you cling to memories, but I also hope it wasn't too long. There are things you need to know. First and always, I love you. Taking care of you and Caroline has been the joy of my life. Which is why I've made arrangements to ensure you're both protected after I'm gone. The house is yours, Denise. Only yours. I've set up the deed so that it can only be sold or transferred with your signature, your physical presence at signing, not a power of attorney. My lawyer, Anthony Reeves, has instructions to verify any sale personally. I know how much this home means to you, to us. It's the place we built our life together. I couldn't bear the thought of you losing it through some legal maneuver or financial hardship. I've also left a separate trust for Caroline that she'll receive when she's 35. I haven't told her about it because I want her to make her own way, not wait for an inheritance. She has your strength and my stubbornness, she'll do fine. Take care of yourself, my love. Live fully. Don't spend too many days looking backward. Always yours, David. I read the letter twice more, tears streaming down my face, before examining the legal documents. They confirmed everything. The house was protected by specific legal provisions that would invalidate any sale not conducted with my in-person signature, verified by David's lawyer. Caroline couldn't sell the house. She had no legal right, power of attorney or not. When I showed Eleanor, she let out a whoop of triumph. Your David was a smart man. Call Stephen right now and tell him about this. I made the call immediately, forwarding scans of the documents to Eleanor's nephew. His response was swift and confident. These are ironclad, Mrs. Collins. The sale your daughter initiated is invalid. I'll file an injunction first thing Monday morning to stop any further proceedings. Thank you, I breathed, relief washing over me. Then a thought occurred. But why is Caroline so desperate to sell now? The housing market has been good for years. Eleanor frowned. Something doesn't add up. As if on cue, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Collins, a woman's voice asked when I answered. This is Brenda from First National Bank. I'm calling because there appears to be some irregular activity on your home equity line of credit. I don't have a home equity line, I replied, confusion turning to dread. A pause. According to our records, a HELOC was opened 3 months ago in your name, with your daughter Caroline listed as having power of attorney. There have been several large withdrawals totaling nearly $175,000. The room seemed to tilt. I never authorized that. I suspected as much, Brenda said. The signatures looked different from our records. I flagged this for our fraud department, but I wanted to speak with you directly. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence. Eleanor waited patiently for me to process what I'd just learned. She's been stealing from me, I finally said, the words bitter in my mouth. Using a fake power of attorney to take out loans against my house. And now she needs to sell it to cover her tracks, Eleanor finished, her expression grim. Before the bank catches on to the fraud. That evening, as Eleanor and I were discussing next steps, a sharp knock came at her door. Through the peephole, I could see Caroline, her face tight with anger. Mom, I know you're in there, she called. Mrs. Winters told me she saw you moving furniture over here. We need to talk. Eleanor raised an eyebrow in silent question. I nodded, better to confront this now, with Eleanor beside me and the truth in my hands. When we opened the door, Caroline looked momentarily surprised to see us both standing firm. She recovered quickly. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were staying here?" I was worried. "Were you?" I asked coolly. "Or were you worried about the bank calling me about a home equity line I never opened?" The color drained from her face. "I can explain." "Please do," I said, stepping back to let her enter. "Explain why you forged my signature. Why you're trying to sell my house. Why you stole nearly $200,000. Caroline's composure cracked. For a moment, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "It's Robert," she whispered. "He's in trouble. Gambling debts. Bad investments. If we don't pay." She trailed off, glancing nervously over her shoulder at the empty street. "Pay what, Caroline?" I pressed. "What aren't you telling me?" Caroline sank onto Eleanor's sofa, her perfect facade crumbling. In that moment, she looked young again, like the scared teenager who'd crawled into my bed the night after David's funeral, asking if we would be okay. "Robert owes money to some dangerous people," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "At first it was just casino debts, but then he started borrowing to cover his losses. When that wasn't enough." She trailed off, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "He turned to loan sharks," Eleanor finished, her expression grim. Caroline nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "He promised he could turn things around with one big investment. But it fell through, and now these people want their money back. All of it. They've been coming by the house. They've threatened us." "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked, hurt mingling with anger. "I would have helped you, not by selling my home behind my back, but I would have found a way." "Robert wouldn't let me tell you," she said miserably. "He said it would ruin his reputation, that his career would be over if people found out. And then he came up with this plan." She gestured helplessly. "He convinced me it was the only way." "So you decided to defraud your own mother?" The words tasted bitter on my tongue. Caroline flinched. "He said we'd pay you back once his investments recovered. That you'd never even know about the loan. And then when the bank started asking questions, he panicked. Said we needed to sell the house fast, pay off the line of credit, and no one would be the wiser. Except I'd lose my home," I reminded her. "We were going to buy you a nice condo," she said weakly. "Something smaller, easier to manage." Eleanor made a disgusted noise. "While you pocketed the difference?" Caroline's silence was answer enough. I stood up, needing distance. "How deep are you in, exactly?" 230,000. Caroline's voice was small. The $175,000 from the equity line wasn't enough. "We still owe them the rest, and they want it by the end of the month or..." She shuddered. I thought of my comfortable but modest savings, the small life insurance policy David had left, my retirement fund. Not enough to cover that amount without selling the house, the very thing I was fighting to prevent. "Does Robert know you're here?" Eleanor asked suddenly. Caroline shook her head. "He thinks I'm at a client dinner. He'd be furious if he knew I was telling you all this." "You need to leave him," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "I can't." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand what he's like when he's angry. And these people he owes, they know where we live, where I work." I remembered the controlling way Robert always had his arm around Caroline, how she'd gradually stopped visiting me without him, how she checked her phone nervously when he texted. The signs had been there all along, but I'd dismissed them, not wanting to interfere in her marriage. Eleanor caught my eye, her expression conveying what we were both thinking. Caroline wasn't just in financial trouble, she was afraid of her husband. "You can stay here," Eleanor offered. "Until we figure this out." Caroline shook her head vehemently. "He'd find me. And he'd be even angrier." "Then we'll go to the police," I said firmly. "No." Caroline's panic was immediate. These aren't the kind of people you call the police on, Mom. They have connections. Before I could respond, Caroline's phone buzzed. She checked it, her face paling. It's Robert. He's looking for me. I have to go. Caroline, please don't leave like this, I begged, grabbing her hand. We can find another way. She pulled away. There is no other way. I'm sorry about the house, Mom. I really am. But Robert's already found another buyer who's willing to close quickly, no questions asked. They're offering cash. That sale won't go through, I told her, my voice hardening. David made sure of it. Caroline paused at the door. What do you mean? Your father protected the house with a special provision. It can't be sold without my physical presence at signing, not through a power of attorney. And his lawyer has to verify any sale personally. She stared at me, shock giving way to something like hope, then fear again. Robert's going to lose it when he finds out. Then don't tell him yet, Eleanor suggested. Give us a few days to come up with a plan. Caroline hesitated, clearly torn. 2 days, she finally agreed. That's all I can manage before he starts pushing for the sale to move forward. After she left, Eleanor and I sat in heavy silence. You believe her? Eleanor asked. About Robert being dangerous? I nodded slowly. I've had suspicions for years. The way she's changed, become more isolated. The nervous habits she never had before. I just didn't want to see it. Eleanor squeezed my hand. This isn't just about saving your house anymore. No, I agreed. It's about saving my daughter. The next morning, I called Anthony Reeves, David's lawyer. His secretary initially tried to put me off, saying he was booked solid, but when I mentioned David's name and the house provision, she quickly put me through. Mrs. Collins, he greeted me warmly. It's been far too long. David made me promise to check on you, you know. I'm ashamed I haven't done a better job of it. It seems I could have used your help sooner, I admitted, explaining the situation. His response was immediate and reassuring. I'll file an emergency injunction today to block any sale. And I'll notify all the title companies in the county about the provision on your deed. But Mrs. Collins, if what you're telling me about these loans is true, your daughter and her husband could be facing fraud charges. I closed my eyes, thinking of Caroline's fear. What if I don't want to press charges against my daughter? That would be your decision, he said carefully. But these loan sharks are another matter entirely. If they're threatening your family, we need to involve the authorities. I wasn't so sure. People desperate enough to borrow from criminals weren't likely to be deterred by legal threats. Let me think about next steps, I said. For now, I just want to secure my house. Consider it done, Anthony assured me. And Mrs. Collins? David would be proud of you for fighting. When I hung up, I found Eleanor watching me, concern etched on her face. What are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that it's time to confront Robert. 6 months later, I stood in my backyard, breathing in the scent of fresh earth and new beginnings. David's garden, once his pride and joy, was now blooming again under my care, with a few new additions. The sunflowers are looking strong, said Anthony, handing me a glass of iced tea. They'll be taller than the fence by August. I smiled, watching the afternoon light play through the leaves of the old maple tree. David would have approved of the changes. So much had happened since that confrontation with Robert in early spring. I remember the shock on his face when Anthony Reeves, Eleanor, Caroline, and I arrived at his office unannounced. The way his charm evaporated when Anthony laid out the legal reality, that the house could not be sold, that the loans taken out using fraudulent power of attorney were being investigated, and that the dangerous people he owed money to were now the subject of a police investigation. You have no idea what you've done, Robert had hissed at Caroline, his handsome face contorted with rage, all pretense of civility gone. In that moment, I saw what my daughter had been living with, the threat beneath the smooth exterior. What Robert hadn't known was that we'd gone to the police first, with Anthony's help. Detective Ramirez had been particularly interested in the loan sharks, who turned out to be connected to a larger criminal operation they'd been trying to build a case against for years. Robert had stormed out, but the damage was done. By evening, he had cleaned out their joint accounts and disappeared. The last we heard, he'd fled to Mexico, leaving Caroline to deal with the aftermath of his schemes. She had moved in with me temporarily while sorting through the financial wreckage. The creditors eventually settled for a fraction of what was owed once the fraud was exposed. Caroline had to sell her house and car, surrender her designer wardrobe, and start over with almost nothing. It was during those difficult months of rebuilding that we truly reconnected. Without Robert's influence, the real Caroline gradually re-emerged, the daughter who had once helped me plant David's garden, who had her father's laugh and my stubborn determination. "Mom, your roses need pruning," Caroline called from the side yard, pulling me back to the present. She was wearing old jeans and one of David's flannel shirts I'd kept, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. So different from the polished woman who had once looked at this garden and seen only the monetary value of the property. "I'll get to them tomorrow," I promised. "How's the studio coming along?" Caroline smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "Almost ready for clients. The lighting is perfect." 3 months ago, Caroline had converted the garden shed into a small photography studio. She'd loved photography in college, before meeting Robert and pursuing the marketing career he deemed more suitable. Now, she was rebuilding her life on her own terms, specializing in family portraits and pet photography. Anthony raised his glass. To new beginnings. Eleanor joined us, carrying a tray of sandwiches. And to consequences for those who deserve them, she added with satisfaction. Last month, Robert had been arrested while trying to re-enter the country with a false passport. He was now facing multiple charges of fraud, tax evasion, and more. Caroline had filed for divorce immediately after he'd fled, and it had been finalized in her absence. She still flinched sometimes when the phone rang unexpectedly, but the fear was gradually fading from her eyes. As we sat around the old picnic table David had built, sharing lunch in the garden he'd loved, I felt his presence strongly, not as a ghost, but as a foundation. He had protected this home even after death, giving me the security I needed to help our daughter when she needed it most. "I've been thinking," I said, watching a butterfly land on one of David's rosebushes. "The house feels too big for just me." Caroline's face fell slightly. "You're not thinking of selling after all this?" "Never," I assured her. "But I was thinking that the master bedroom and bath could be converted into a separate suite. If you wanted to stay permanently." Her eyes widened. "Mom, I couldn't." "You could," I said firmly. "This house was always meant to be a family home. Your father would want it that way." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "It makes good sense. You both benefit from the arrangement." Anthony, who had become a regular visitor these past months, smiled. "I could help with the legal paperwork to protect both your interests." Caroline was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'd like that," she said softly. "But I need to contribute. Pay rent, at least." "We'll figure out something fair," I agreed. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Caroline and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "I never properly apologized," she said suddenly. "For what I almost did to you. For betraying your trust." I turned to look at her, really look at her. The polished exterior was gone, but so was the fear that had replaced it. In her eyes, I saw reflection, humility, and the strength that comes from rebuilding oneself from the ground up. "We've both made mistakes," I told her. "The important thing is that we learn from them." "I have," she promised. "More than you know." We sat in comfortable silence as dusk deepened around us. From inside came the soft buzzing of my phone, probably Anthony, who had taken to checking in each evening, his friendship gradually turning into something more, something neither of us had expected at our age. "You should answer that," Caroline said with a knowing smile. "Tell Anthony I said hello." As I rose to get the phone, I paused to look back at my daughter, at the house we now truly shared, at the garden where David's memory lived on in every bloom. The house I had fought so hard to keep had become something new, not just walls and a roof, but a true home again. A place of second chances and healing. A foundation for whatever came next. David had protected the structure, but we had saved its soul. And in doing so, we had found our way back to each other. "I'm glad you stayed," Caroline said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. I smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." And neither was she. We were both exactly where we belonged, in the house we had built, not just with lumber and nails, but with love, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again.